Hello, my name is Rita Reisor and I am with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Utah Ecological Services Field Office. Today I will be providing updates from our office, primarily on our regulatory obligations, as we have several partners who will also be presenting today that will cover many of our other conservation activities over the past year. Okay, first up we have listing updates. In 2002, a non-warranted decision was issued for the three milkvetch species, Cisco milkvetch, Stage Station milkvetch, and Isley's milkvetch. This was published in the Federal Register in December of 2022. And in January of 2023, we also published a withdrawal of the proposed listing for Graham's beard tongue and White River beard tongue. Details that led to that decision were covered previously in 2022 in a presentation given at this meeting by Jenna Lewinson. And upcoming in 2023, there will be a listing decision for both species of the Joshua tree. Based on a court order, the listing decision was due to the court by March 1st. This obligation was met and the final decision should be published by the end of this month in the Federal Register. And as part of our listing updates, I would like to mention Deseret Milkvetch because we have been working on a post-delisting monitoring for this species. And in 2023, we will be completing the 5th year of the mandatory post-delisting monitoring period. After that, the data will be evaluated for population trends and for any concerns for the species. Based on those findings, monitoring may be continued or may be completed. Please look for more information on the monitoring results at next year's meeting. Okay, next up we have species status assessments, often referred to as SSAs. We have completed an SSA for Cisco milkvetch, Stage Station milkvetch, and Isley's milkvetch in 2022. The Ute Ladies Tresses SSA is being finalized and will be published with the 5-year review later this year. And upcoming in 2023, SSAs for Winkler cactus, San Rafael cactus, and Kodachrome bladderpod are being initiated. Though probably not completed, we have been facing significant delays working on SSAs for these species due to staffing shortages and high workload and other regional priorities. Also, I'd like to mention that Garisha's globe mallow SSA should be completed this year, and Arizona Ecological Services is the lead for that species. Okay, next we have 5-year reviews. There was only one 5-year review that was due on our National Work Plan for 2022. That was for the dwarf bear poppy, and that was completed in August of 2022. Upcoming in 2023, you can expect a 5-year review for Ute Ladies Tresses out of our office to be published, and one for the Navajo sedge will be published out of the Arizona Ecological Services Field Office, as they are the lead for that species. Okay, recovery planning. Completed in 2022 was the draft recovery plan for the Uinta Basin hookless cactus and Perriette cactus. That draft went out for peer and partner review and also for public comment in 2022. We are currently in the process of responding to comments and finalizing the draft recovery plan with a plan to publish that in the Federal Register by September of 2023. The final item that I want to touch on today are a few of our conservation agreements. Historically, conservation agreements have been heavily utilized in the arena of wildlife conservation, but have remained a highly underutilized conservation tool for plant species. I'm happy to say that Utah and its partners has really stepped up and led the effort in developing and using conservation agreements for plant species. As such, Utah has really been able to lead by example for other states in our region and across the country. Currently, we have 3 plant-related conservation agreements covering 6 different species within Utah. First, we have the Graham's and White River Beard Tongue Conservation Agreement, and currently partners in that agreement are focusing on implementing the range-wide monitoring implementation plan. And the same with the Goose Creek Milkvetch. The focus currently is on range-wide monitoring and data analysis. Our newest conservation agreement is for the Cisco, Stage Station, and Isley's milkvetches, and I will go into more detail on those in the next slide. This agreement covers all 3 species simultaneously and also brought together 6 state and federal partners for developing and signing of the agreement. Those partners include the Utah Department of Transportation, the School and Institutional Trust Land Administration, the Utah Department of Wildlife Resources, the Bureau of Land Management, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and the U.S. Forest Service. This agreement was finalized in May of 2022 and has a duration of 30 years. The conservation agreement itself was developed with the species status assessment in mind and addresses many of the stressors and the data gaps that were identified in the species status assessment. And I would like to note that while this agreement covers all 3 species simultaneously, each species is treated individually within the agreement itself. So conservation measures were developed specific to each species' unique circumstance. Some key items that were included in the conservation agreement are the delineation of habitat polygons and specific conservation areas for each species, species-specific conservation measures based on the needs and the stressors for each particular species, and a species-specific range-wide monitoring plan is currently being developed and implemented. The conservation agreement also established some priority actions, including the range-wide monitoring for each species, survey protocols, seed collections, and genetic evaluation for Isley's milkvetch are all some of the priority actions that are implemented, along with developing consistent conservation measures for each species. Here is an example of one of the maps from the conservation agreement. This is for Cisco Milkvetch. And here you can see the conservation assessment area, which is outlined in black, as well as some dark blue polygons, which signify occupied habitat, and the hatch marking, which delineates conservation areas. Areas without hatch marking are areas that are excluded from the conservation agreement conservation areas. Similar maps are included in the conservation agreement for Stage Station Milkvetch and also for Isley's Milkvetch. And that concludes the presentation for the Utah Ecological Services Field Office, and I am ready to take any questions.